Alright, here we have our new build, the Apogee Components Gyro Chaser. We're going to be using a helicopter recovery, meaning the rocket comes down via helicopter blades, as you can see in the picture photographed right here. It uses the 18mm engines and some different building techniques involved in this one. This one actually comes with a DVD to help you do the instructions, and it is also available on YouTube and through the Apogee Components website. So we've got everything laid out here. We've got our body tube, our motor assembly pieces, different type of nose cone than a lot of us have used before. This is a soft plastic that we'll be doing it. It's in two parts. We've got our main body tube, our engine tube, some little plywood, and this came on a plywood sheet like this that I had to finish the cuts where the laser hadn't cut through everything, and then sand off the fuzzies. So very, very carefully cut this out. It's plywood and it's fairly sturdy, but still you don't want a chance breaking it. We've got some rubber bands. These are the dental style rubber bands, our launch lug. A couple of little aluminum tubes, a big one and a little one in diameter wise. We're actually going to be cutting those with a X-Acto knife, and there's a couple ways things you want to do to make sure you don't lose the pieces as you cut them. Some little rotor pieces here, our balsa wood blades, and our fins, and then we have a graphite rod, some thread, our Kevlar shock cord, and then a piece of fabric mesh that we'll be using to reinforce part of the blades here. Of course, we've got our fin guide right here. So we're going to sand our fins, and I will be papering these fins, even though I really don't need to worry about this is designed for competition. I'm not worried about weight, and this is a fairly thin balsa wood, so I'm going to go ahead and paper the fins to give them a little bit of strength. Since I'm really not doing this rocket for competition purposes, I'm doing it for the wow factor at launches and for kids kind of thing. So I'm not too worried about weight. Just get it up there and I'll be happy. Alrighty, so we're going to go ahead and start getting everything ready. Remember, I always preach about having little Ziploc bags. Well, we've got a Ziploc bag, and I took this one a step further because we have all these small pieces that I'm actually worried about breaking. I've got a couple of medicine containers that I'm putting everything in. A little teeny small piece here. We want to make sure that goes in there. A little aluminum pieces. I'm actually going to separate the metal from the wood. I forgot I was going to do that, so let me pull that wood piece out. So we got our wood pieces in there. We're going to put our metal pieces and launch lug and rubber bands into this one over here. Don't want to lose these rubber bands. And then we've got these wood pieces here. I'm going to throw those in there too. Now for the Ziploc baggie, we're going to go ahead and I've got a smaller one here. There we go. We're going to go ahead and throw our rings in there. We're going to throw our clay in there. We're going to drop our shock cord in there, our little thread here, and our piece of cloth, and our fin guide mount marker there. Squish the air out, zip that shut. So now I've got my parts ready to go. I don't have to worry about losing these small parts. And of course everything drops right inside the tote. So we've got that protected. We'll put our balsa on the side here and try and keep it from getting crunched. The graphite rod goes in. The only thing that's not going to fit in here straight is going to be our tube. I don't like supporting tubes up on the edge. Eventually it's going to bow, so we don't want that to happen. We don't want to bend in our tubes. The best way to store your rockets is either straight up and down or on a flat surface with the fins hanging off the table or whatever. You want to support the entire length of the tube if you have it flat, otherwise it will develop a bow. So I have little stands that I build as I'm building rockets. There's a tutorial here on how to build them. Here's a couple for my Aspire. This is just a wooden dowel and a piece of wood screwed together and the rockets slide right on. I've got some where I've used spent engine casings to hold the rocket in place. Again, we just don't want to have our rockets warping and laying them down on the ground with the fins holding up the end means it's going to bow in the middle. So we're going to go ahead and get started on these fins. We're going to paper them and get everything going. We've got our list here. We'll be diving into our DVD instruction. Lots to go. Very important thing I forgot to say in the beginning, so I re-recorded this section here, and I'm going to put this before we do the parts list. After you pull all your parts out of your plastic bag that the rocket comes in, I always save the bag because I can use this bag to protect my board from CA glue or super glue. So save your bag, and you'll see where I forgot to say it when we went over the parts. Save the bag. You're going to need this. I do this with all my rockets just in case I'm doing some CA glue or some epoxy glue. It's not going to stick to this as readily as it will stick to your mat, your table, or whatever other surface you have. So save that plastic bag for CA glue. Alright, we're going to start the process of skinning the fins on the Gyro Chaser. Just like on my tutorial how to do skinning of fins, we're going to be using regular copy paper or printer paper. We've got the balsa wood fin. I've got some wood glue. You can use regular white glue. I use a squeegee. It kind of helps me out to flatten the glue excess. First thing we're going to do is we're going to cut the paper to the size of the fin, a little bit larger obviously than the fin. We're going to put some glue on the fin. Now that's a lot more than what we need. We're going to be wiping about 99% of that back off. Now we're going to spread it around. And again, this is all in my tutorial on skinning fins. We're going to get an even coat all the way around the fin. Alright. Now that we've got the fin coated, wipe our finger off. Keep a towel by. I've got a dry towel and a damp towel. Damp towel is good for getting the glue off your finger. The dry towel dries your finger afterwards. Now we're going to wipe most of this glue right back off. This is why you need to have the towel nearby. We want to do this quickly. You see there's a line there. Get that off. And then immediately get this piece of paper on the top. Rub it on all over. This is where the squeegee comes in handy. And we're making sure that there's no excess puddles or buildup of glue on that paper. Now quickly, we've got to get to the other side because if we don't, this will start to warp. Also, standing by, you need to have a pile of books. And make sure that they're smooth and the surface that you're going to lay this on is smooth, otherwise it'll pick up the texture in the paper and the glue. And that's pretty much permanent once that happens. Alright, wipe off the excess. And then quickly get our paper on. Make sure it's attached. Quick squeegee. And you'll see that I kind of run the squeegee on the edges. Now, these aren't airfoiled fins. These are just on there. Take my finger, go around the edge. That kind of helps define the edge a little bit, so I know where I'm cutting. And then we're going to put this under a book very quickly to dry overnight. We want to make sure that this has sufficient time to fully dry and cure before we look at it again. So that's skinning the fins on the gyrocopter from Apogee Components. Again, I'm doing this because I'm not using it for a competition flyer. I'm just going to send this thing up as an impressive, hey, look at this helicopter recovery rocket. Alright, the fins have had a day to sit with the glue on them, sandwiched between a couple of books. Again, remember, you want a flat book with no texture because it will pick up the texture on the paper. So now we're going to prep them for what I call sealing the ends. First, we're going to kind of do a wide cut off all this excess paper. Now we're going to do a little bit more of a close-in cut. We're going to try and avoid cutting the balsa wood, but we want to get as much paper off with the scissors as we can. So close, keep the scissors angled so you're biting paper close to the balsa wood, but not actually the balsa wood. And a lot of little short bites. And up there. You'll find that the corners are the hardest to get. Don't fret if you don't get it all with the scissors. We will be doing a little bit of sanding. Okay. Now you kind of go back and you look where can you nibble off a little more. Just angle your scissors. Got pretty close on most of this one. Okay, so that's all the excess paper off. Now we have to prep it for CA glue. We're going to seal the ends with CA glue, but we need to have our root edge and our outer edge flat. We've got some paper that's going to be overlapped out there, so we're going to kind of give it a little sand job until it's flat and smooth. If you get a little bit of curl up at the edges, don't worry about that. We're going to seal that down. So we're sanding on a flat object until we get down to the balsa wood. Now we're going to kind of, that fuzz on the ends, we're going to make that disappear. But we've got to still keep it flat, so try not to round it. And you can take a piece of sandpaper in your hand and just kind of an angle, and you'll see that those pieces just fall off. Feeling for flat, still need a little bit more. Check for flat. And then, now we're not going to be doing CA glue on the root edge because it would make attachment to the rocket difficult. And that takes care of all that. Now we'll do the outer edge. Again, we're trying to keep it flat and sanding off just what we need to. There might be a little bit of glue that you're sanding to, so it'll feel funny. Just a little bit at a time. Take your time, be patient. After you got it flattened down, either by hand or if you're good, you can do it with a block. This one, if you round it a little bit, it's okay, but you basically want to try and not sand the paper that's on the flat part of the balsa wood because it makes it harder to hide. And you can see how these little threads come off, and that's the parts that I'm knocking off when I'm doing the side sanding. Just enough to make those fall off and take away the fuzzy. And then we're ready to seal it. Now remember I told you to save your plastic bag at the very beginning? Well, we split the bag open, lay it out flat, now we have something to lay our stuff down on when we use CA glue so that it doesn't get stuck. We're going to take the CA glue, thin CA glue again. We're going to run it along the edge. We're just going to paint the edges. And then we're going to wipe off the excess. Now remember, CA glue can create a little steam and a little heat, so wearing glasses is a good idea. Never fun to get this splattered in your eyes or on your face. Try and avoid skin contact if you can. It will bond to skin instantly. We're going to wipe all our excess off. So we have it all wiped off. Throw it on the plastic. It won't adhere to the plastic as hard as it would if it was, let's say the mat or your countertop or something else. Alright, so now you can see that I already did 2 of them. So now I can actually start sanding those 2. What we're doing is we're sanding the roughness on the leading and trailing edges. We can do a little bit of sanding on the far edge too. And we're just looking for any extra paper. You hold it up to the light and you'll see extra paper. And you're just going to lightly sand it and knock off that rough edge. Don't sand too much because, again, if you get into the plane here in this area along the edge and you start sanding paper off, it's going to be harder to make it disappear. And then you can go right along the edge itself like this to round it over. And that's pretty good. I'm going to have a little bit showing on this one, but paint will hide a lot. So just slightly over that. And all this does is it adds a lot of strength to that balsa wood. That's the whole purpose for skinning, is it adds strength. It makes finishing a lot easier. I'm not trying to fill grain. Some of this will show up, so you're still going to have to sand your primer, but it's a lot less sanding than if you use dope or primer only. So we're going to sand all these edges down until we're happy with them. And then once we're happy with them, we can start attaching them to the rocket. All right, we're up to mounting the fins on our body tube. As you can remember, yesterday we made the engine mount and we glued that into the body tube. We have our long marking for our launch lug and then our shorter markings for the fins. The fins are mounted directly on the tail end of the rocket. They're not up higher or anything. They're flush with the bottom of the rocket. You can eyeball mount them if you want, or if you have a fin guide, you can use that. I'm going to be using the Estes fin guide. You can use CA glue, or you can use wood glue, however you feel like you want to do it. So what we're going to do is I'm actually going to use a wicking tip so I can get in closer and paint versus apply. So what we can do is we can put this on and we'll line it up right where we want it. We'll make sure that we have everything straight with our 3 fins, and then we'll start applying glue and putting them on. So we'll get them on the jig first. We'll scoot our ends up here. We'll get the fins right up against it. Then we'll kind of line everything up and make sure we're happy with our alignments. It's a little low. Let's move him. The whole tube moved up. Just want to move the fin up. There we go. And then our other one is a little higher. Let's move you down. There we go. So everybody looks pretty good there. And again, I did draw my lines on the tube because that will help me, because this can wiggle back and forth a little bit. So the lines on the tube will help me try and line up and get everything straight so I'm not tilted at any angle. Then we're just going to take our CA glue and we're going to paint our rocket fin right into place. So we're lined up on our line. We're just going to paint our rocket fin in place. And then we'll hit it with the accelerator. And that's set in place. And we'll do our next one. Do our line up. Make sure we've got it exactly where we want it. Let's paint her in place. And then hit her with our accelerator. And now she's locked in place. We still have to get the other side. I'm just getting one side right now because it's the easiest way to do it. So we're lined up. Paint the joint. Hit it with our accelerator. And we're done. So now we can attach our brackets and carefully pull our rocket off. So we'll get this off and then we'll start on our next step. Alright, so we've got it out of the jig now, and we've gotten the one side that we did our glue on. So now we have to do the other side. So we're just going to take and do a paint right down the edge of that, and we'll hit it with our accelerator again. Nice thing about the accelerator is it takes the wait time down. And we'll go on to our next one. And we're not trying to put too much on here. We want just enough to paint the edge. We're just trying to get it to adhere. We're not trying to goop a lot on it. Okay, one more. Now I will be doing a different thing on this than they did with the Apogee components video. I will be putting fillets on this rocket. Excess there, so we're going to make sure all our excess is wiped off. Okay. There we go there. So now we have our body tube and fin assembly ready. Like I said, I am going to be doing a couple of things different. I've got a little bit of glue I've got to pick off in a couple of spots where it's spattered. And I will be putting a fillet on here also because I want to make sure that these fins do stay attached. It'll be a very, very thin fillet. I might just use regular glue. I might use the Fix-It epoxy. I haven't quite decided yet. But the idea is that I'm going to sand these joints a little bit. I'm going to be laying the thread for the Kevlar shot cord through here according to the instructions. So we want to make sure that these fins are on tight and I don't feel like having damage done to them. So we'll be doing that also. We're up to going ahead and doing our fillets on our fin. Again, if this were for competition, I probably wouldn't do fillets on the fin because I would want to restrict my weight, and this is going to put weight on it just like skinning the fins. I'm doing this just for the strength of the rocket. I have no desire to send this up as a competition. It's just purely for wow factor. So I'm going to be putting fillets on the fins just like I skinned the fins. I love Fix-It epoxy. It's a two-part epoxy clay. Really, really good for making fillets with. And a little goes a long, long way. So, got that there. Equal amounts of part A and part B. A little bit more of both of them, I think, here. Just a touch more A. There we go. So I kind of eyeball it and it looks right. Now, along with the epoxy, I have some alcohol, just regular rubbing alcohol. You saw my putty knife. I like using this for dosing it out. Works really good. You can use a tongue depressor to act as your to help smooth your fillets out, and you want to have a towel nearby so that you can wipe your fingers constantly, either drying off the alcohol or the residue that the epoxy starts to leave on your fingers after a little bit. So we're going to need the two parts together until we have a uniform color. And remember, most of your epoxies are heat sensitive and temperature sensitive. The hotter it is, the faster it cures. The colder it is, the slower it cures. So keep that in mind when you're using your epoxies. If it's super, super hot in your house or outside or wherever you're working, you're going to have a faster set time. So remember that when you're using your epoxies. Okay, that looks pretty good. We're going to break off a small piece. We're going to make a worm. And then we're going to lay that worm. It doesn't have to be the exact length. We're going to lay that worm right in place and kind of touch it lightly with our fingers into place. Now this is where you want to wipe your fingers really, really quick on a towel to get all the stickiness off that you just had from this. And we're going to brace the back side of the fin with your finger, and we're going to push this into the edge where the fin and the body tube meet. Once we've got that pushed in there, you're going to grab your stick, and this is a little bit where it becomes an art form, and you're going to smooth your fillet down with the stick. Just lightly go down, and when you get to the end, you kind of learn how to do a cutoff to where you don't have a funny ending on your fillet. And I'm actually going to put this back on and go the other way with it. Wipe my finger off. We're going to apply that in there. This is the one with the thread, so it's actually going to help hold that thread in place along with the CA glue for the shock core thread. Then we're going to drag it the other way. And again, the angle you hold your stick is going to determine how much epoxy clay is left in place. Okay, so you're happy with your general fillet. Now we want to smooth it out. This is where the alcohol comes into play. I'm going to dip my finger in the alcohol, put the drop on the, wipe off the excess on the cloth, and then just kind of smooth it really quickly with my finger. And you're not going to be able to get it perfect. Don't worry, you're going to be doing some sanding later. The idea is just to get it kind of the way you like it. And that smoothed out fairly nice. You wipe off the areas you don't need anything out with your finger. And we're done with our first fillet. So we're going to go ahead and do the rest of our fillets, and then we'll get back to putting the rotor assembly together.